from the university. From the University of Namibia. And he's also an alumni of the program for young politicians in Africa. You're most welcome, Your Excellency. Our other guest speaker is Her Excellency, Honorable Joana Mamombe. Joana Mamombe is Zimbabwe's youngest female member of parliament. She's a molecular biologist by profession. She's also a youth leader in the Citizens Coalition for Change, the main opposition party in Zimbabwe, which is led by President Advocate Nelson Chamisa. Joana is also a respected human rights activist. Through her active role in parliament, she has championed changes in law and spoken truth to power. And she continues to highlight the plight of the unoppressed. She has suffered numerous reprisals from the state, and she has been persecuted through countless persecutions. Just recently, she survived an enforced disappearance, but this has not killed her resolve to champion positive reform. No wonder in 2020, One Young World awarded her the prestigious global award, Politician of the Year. Now, over to our guests of honor. We're eager to hear you speak on the topic of the role of young people in the leadership trajectory. Your Excellency.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I think our guest speaker, Joanne, you in now? Joanne? Hello? Hello, Joanne, you in? Okay, we'll go ahead and hello, Maximilian. Hello. Hello, Maximilian. Hello. Hello, Joanne, are you in there? We can't hear you. We can't.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. Hello, hi. How are you today? You there? You do hear me? Hello? Hello? Hello, Maximilian.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, you muted yourself.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay, good.
You can hear me now?
Yes, you can.
But the audio coming from you is very, very low.
Oh, you can't hear me?
It's very low from your side.
Really?
Yes.
How about now?
Maybe it's just between me and you because everybody else is saying they can hear me perfectly. So perhaps I can just
yeah,
continue.
I hear you. Even me, I hear you very perfectly well. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so perfect.
No.
So thank you very much for making it up to meet and sharing your insights about leadership. And today our guest speaker, Honorable Maximilian and Honorable John, who are MPs in Namibia and Zimbabwe, respectively. So we have a very good topic today, and I am glad we have like young leaders in politics, which makes it more different than the usual ones. Yeah. So perhaps I might start with Maximilian. For you, share your experience, because people learn from others' experiences. Share your experiences. What motivated you and gave you courage to go into politics, even at a young age?
Can you come again? I did not get you quite clearly there.
No, I say that what motivated you to join politics, even at a very young age?
Yes, no, thank you very much. I just wanted, before we continue, perhaps, Mr. Tumwine, to just get clarity on whether we are going to, because I prepared sort of a presentation, whether it's a dialogue between you and me, or whether we are going to present, a few words, then you come in with, and other people come in with questions and so forth. So I just wanted to know the modus operandi, because when I received the thematic areas, I was of the view that perhaps we must first, present something on those thematic areas, then we'll go into a discussion. So I just wanted to know the modus operandi.
Of course, you can go between. You can use what you prepared. If you want to go, present you can go ahead. You just have like 15 minutes, and
all right,
you have like 15 minutes. So whatever is easier for you.
All right.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Yes, and before I begin, I would like to acknowledge my fellow speaker, the Honorable Joana Mamombe, and Mr. Enoch Tumwine, who is the founder and president of the African Rebirth, and the organizer of this very critical discourse. I've been asked to perform a very crucial task today, and that is to dissect 4 critical areas, which are, and apologies for those that don't know me, my name is Maximilian Kashimune. I'm a 24-year-old member of parliament from the Republic of Namibia, serving in the National Assembly for the official opposition, which is the Popular Democratic Movement, PDM. So in this discourse today, I've been asked to perform a very crucial task today, and that is to discuss 4 critical areas, which are: number 1,
sorry to interrupt.
How should young people prepare for leadership?
Sorry
number 2,
sorry to interrupt. Would you put your video on?
Oh yes, let me. Where do I put it on now? I
asked you to. You can turn it. Turn to video. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I was experiencing some difficulties with the video. I'm not sure what is wrong with my Zoom. I haven't used it for a while since COVID ended.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So as I was saying, I've been asked to perform a critical task today, and that is to dissect 4 critical areas. And number 1 of those areas is that, how should young people prepare for leadership? Number 2, the key strategies young people can use to rise to the top of leadership positions. Number 3, the challenges facing young people politically and socially to attain leadership roles. And lastly, how leadership differs from strategy and how young people can use strategy to attain leadership goals. Now, Mr. Moderator, I will beg the indulgence of the House and propose that I will not deal with the 4 issues systematically as they are outlined there, but I will match some of the issues together because at closer reading of the thematic areas, some of the issues are similar, although not identical. However, Mr. Moderator, before I delve into these critical points of discussion, it is fundamentally important to highlight that this discussion comes at a very crucial time in our body politic in Africa in general, and especially in Southern Africa in particular. Why do I say this? I say this because during this year, 2023 and 2024, 4 of the 6 former liberation movements of Southern Africa will head to crucial elections that will determine the future of Southern Africa. ZANU-PF of Zimbabwe and FRELIMO of Mozambique will head to elections this year, and SWAPO of Namibia and the ANC, the African National Congress of South Africa, will head to the polls in 2024. Now, the former liberation movements of Southern Africa, Mr. Moderator, are unique in the sense that they have never lost elections since the attainment of independence in Namibia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Angola, and Tanzania. And of course, the other 2 liberation movements of former liberation movements of Southern Africa I'm referring to is the MPLA in Angola, which won very contested elections last year, very close knit elections last year. They won just by the nick of time. And then CCM in Tanzania. So those parties constitute the former liberation movements of Southern Africa, 6 of them, which are the ANC, SWAPO, ZANU-PF, FRELIMO, MPLA, and CCM of Tanzania. But for the first time, and perhaps the most crucial time, the generation born post 1990 might and must have a crucial role to play in these elections happening in 2023 and 2024. Africa, Mr. Moderator, has the largest young population in the world, and young people in Africa form part of the largest percentage of eligible voters. Hence, it is imperative to recognize the crucial role that young people, Moderator, ought to play in the discourse surrounding elections in Africa in particular and in Southern Africa in general. This was clearly demonstrated during the Zambian elections in 2021, where young people in that country, in Zambia, came out in record numbers at the polls and handed Hakainde Hichilema and the UPND a sweeping victory over the corrupt government of Edgar Lungu and the Patriotic Alliance, and the Patriotic Front. Now, Mr. Moderator, having acknowledged the critical demographic that young people are in terms of elections in Africa, the crux of this discussion, of this engagement right now, is earmarked at pinpointing exactly how young people ought to join leadership and the key strategies and interventions that young people should pursue in this regard. Now, the first fundamental question that we should be asking is, how should young people prepare for leadership? This is a very fundamental question because as much as we want young people to take up space and participate in politics and be in key positions of power, we also do not want a situation where young people are not prepared to do so. Hence, the occupation of key roles of leadership must equally be accompanied by capacity. In as much as we want young people in key positions of power, those young people must not be incompetent, because if they are, they will be as equally useless as the governments we currently have in power in Africa. Now, Mr. Moderator, young people must know that preparation for involvement in political leadership is a 3-legged approach, which compromises of, number 1, getting educated, number 2, receiving the right mentorship, and number 3, experience through youth leadership and other structures. Now, there are a lot of narratives which attempt to argue that receiving an education is not a necessary imperative to becoming a good leader. This argument has some merit to some extent. However, in the complex geopolitical terrain that we live in today, it is fundamentally important that we have young people that are educated in leadership positions. We cannot afford, and I cannot stress this enough, we cannot afford the same mistakes that those who came before us made and continue to make, by the way, by just appointing any Peter and Paul into positions of government just because of loyalty and patron-client relations. We need to ensure that our generation of leaders as young people are educated in order to combat and address the complex socio-economic challenges confronting our continent. And this is fundamentally important because earlier I said that we must not repeat the same mistakes that the generation before us came, those that came from the bushes. Yesterday, a week ago, I was listening to a leader of the ANC in South Africa when he was talking about the load shedding crisis that is there in terms of the energy crisis that is there. And then one could just, see from his engagement and his discourse that this man actually did not know anything about the electricity crisis and load shedding in South Africa. Lastly, because this man is not even educated to occupy the ministerial position that he has to address that crisis. So I propose that number one, my fundamental argument is that number one, we as young people that want to take up space and want to occupy positions of power must first ensure that we get educated. We don't want a clueless minister who's clueless about finance, just like we are seeing in Africa today. And that is fundamentally the reason why the continent is in the state which is in. So the first step, Mr. Tumwine, is that I argue that the first step towards political leadership is to ensure that you as a young person must acquire an education, because the world that we live in now, the socio-political and geopolitical circumstances that we're in right now dictate that young people must receive an education in order to confront those complex challenges of society. Now, the second step, I argue, towards positioning yourself towards leadership is to ensure that you receive the correct type of mentorship from those that are already in leadership. Now, it is important to note that I highlight the word correct type of leadership that you must receive mentorship from. Not all mentorship you receive is the correct type of mentorship. So as a young person who's aspiring for political leadership and taking up space in your political party or government, you must ensure that the mentorship you are receiving is from the correct type of leader who has already been in the system. You must receive membership from people who have an impeccable record in society and who are always on the side of truth and justice. I don't want to take prejudice against anyone or to say something bad against anyone, but what type of correct political mentorship are you going to receive from ZANU-PF and MSN Magagwa? So the mentorship that you are receiving as a young person who's positioned himself or herself for political leadership must be, you must ensure that it is actually the correct type of mentorship. Thirdly, Mr. Moderator, is that young people who want to aspire for political leadership, whether in their party or in government, must ensure that they position themselves for leadership by gaining experience through youth leadership. Structures such as the SRC and youth leagues provide an imperative instrument for young people to gain experience before they eventually venture into mainstream politics. I can tell you now, for example, that many of us young people who are serving in various local authorities, regional councils, and national structures in my country, Namibia, first served in student representative councils at universities, and then we migrated to youth leagues, and then eventually we entered mainstream politics. So do not skip that critical stage as a young person. That initial stage of molding in the SRC, in youth league politics, that stage is the bedrock of a strong leader of the future. So I encourage each and every young person really to first gain experience with the SRC and the youth leagues before venturing into mainstream politics, because that is where most of us fundamentally we learned the trade of politics before we eventually matured into mainstream politics. Now, there are a number of challenges young people face in joining mainstream politics. And one of these challenges that we face is the cumbersome journey and barriers that many political parties have put in place, which hamper the full participation of young people, in the internal politics of political parties and our eventual participation in government. For example, I can tell you now that the governing party in Namibia, which is SWAPO, has an internal requirement that one must serve 30 years uninterrupted years in their central committee before being elected as a president of that party. And then there are also a number of other requirements for all other positions as well, all other top structure positions within SWAPO. Now, I ask myself the question, if there is a requirement that says that in order to become a president of SWAPO, you must have served 30 uninterrupted years in the central committee, when will SWAPO ever have a young person as its presidential candidate? It's virtually impossible, because you must have taken membership of SWAPO since you were born, since you were a baby, so that when you are 30 or 35, you now qualify at least to be a president or a vice president. So these are the type of systematic political barriers that stop young people from fully participating in politics. However, I'm very glad that in our country, there are a number of parties, such as my party and a number of other parties, that have taken a proactive stance in really pushing young people into key positions of power. I can tell you now, for example, that our parliament has, from the opposition, a member who's, I'm 24 years old. There are two other members who are 20, who are turning 27 this year. There is another member who's 32, and then there's another member who's also 33 or so forth. So you can see from the opposition that we are really actively pushing young people into key positions of power. So one thing that we have to address in terms of the barriers facing young people in terms of their full participation in politics is at the party level, where parties put very stringent requirements for young people to access leadership in their internal party structures and eventually government. I mean, if there is a requirement to have 30 years uninterrupted serving in the central committee, then I fear that no young person in SWAPO will ever ascend to the office of the presidency. So these are the things that we must take into cognizance of in terms of the barriers for young people joining, government and so forth. But even if, young people are pushed into positions of power in terms of the party and they are appointed to structures such as the National Assembly, we are safe in, for example, the party must ensure that that young person is able to fully express him or herself in that structure, in that particular space. We have a lot of, young people who are, because of pressure from society, pushed into these positions to sort of make it look like parties are now accepting young people in their leadership folds. But then these young people are just kept as placeholders in these structures, and they don't contribute anything significant in those particular spaces that they are put in. A lot of young people from Fees Must Fall in South Africa, were appointed to the National Assembly, were elected to the National Assembly on the ticket of the ANC, on the ticket of the EFF and so forth, and the ticket of the DA. But then once they got into those particular structures, is that they became placeholders in those structures, and they actually forgot the struggles of the young people that sent them to those structures. So in as much as we are also pushing ourselves to go into these positions of power in these spaces, the political parties must ensure that we are just not, there for the gallery to just look at Max there, he's 24 years old, he sits in parliament, our party is doing something about young people. It doesn't serve any service if I'm just sitting in the National Assembly and I'm actually useless as a young person, because I am just joining the choir of the deadwoods in parliament and I'm not contributing anything significant. So as young people, also when we are going into these spaces, we must push ourselves to carry the generational agenda in those spaces and not just to become placeholders like some of the people I don't want to mention here who went into the South African parliament after Fees Must Fall. So, Mr. Moderator, I see that my time is limited. We still have time to engage as the discussion goes on. But those are just few of my contributions on the topic at hand today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maximus. Such an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. And we'll get back to you and we'll have like full interaction here. So I want to bring in Honorable Joana, our MP from Zimbabwe. In your view, how should you prepare for leadership? And speaking from your story, how did you prepare for leadership? Perhaps could become an inspirational story to young leaders in Zimbabwe or other countries. Honorable Joana, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you very much for inviting me on this platform to share my experiences as a young person who got into the mainstream politics. Currently, I'm a member of parliament here in Zimbabwe, representing Harare West constituency. Let me just try to turn on the video, but we don't have power, so I might lose my network, but I will just try to turn on my video as I see that, Mr. Moderator, you are requesting that I turn my video on.
No, you don't have to. If you're going to lose power, we need your submission on the video.
All right, thank you for that.
Yes,
so I can proceed. So I was listening to the contributions that were made by my honorable colleague, Honorable Mark. Those were very fundamental points that he was raising in terms of young people preparing for leadership. So I will also share my brief background and how I got into mainstream politics. I got into parliament in 2018 as the youngest member . And before getting into parliament, I also had started my political journey as a student leader. So the reason why I'm sharing this is that I agree with Comrade Marx to say that sometimes you need to start from below. You need to make sure that as a young person, you join different leadership groups where you perform in different roles as a leader when you want to prepare for the mainstream positions politically. So I started as a student leader during my days as a student in university. I joined the biggest students' union in Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe National Students' Union. Then from there, I grew within the leadership positions, the leadership ranks, as in the SRC that Comrade Marx was talking about. Then from SRC, I got into the National Students' Union. Then from there, I was performing different roles as a leader, preparing myself, building that foundation for the mainstream politics. So that time, that's also when you meet different people who actually believe in you, who believe in your leadership and so forth. So those people becomes your support group. They become your mentors and so forth. So that's how I then grew to say, I want to graduate from a student leader or an activist to become a mainstream politician. So I joined the opposition political party because I identified with its ideology. I identified with the struggles of the opposition. Then it political party, which is the biggest opposition, and Nelson Chamisa, that is the Citizens Coalition for Change. So this is where I am, and now I am in parliament. So one of the takeaways that I want to encourage young people is to say that, number one, the issues of mentorship around yourself, with the people who believe in your leadership, who also believe in the capacity that you have. because sometimes you do not know that you have that capacity unless and until those people, actually encourage you, actually pushes you to that, limit to say you can.
Hello, you. Hey, Joanna? Hello? Oh, no. I think we lost her. So sorry about that. You're making very, very good fundamental points. Hey, Max, hello? Hello,
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. At least we are still around. Yeah, so I wanted just to follow up with questions before we open up to the audience to ask their questions. In your preparation, what do you think young people should shift their mindset to? What kind of mindset do we need to, to propagate, to make it grow, to make it like we can do it? Share with us, like, what kind of mindset young people should really have or possess to attain certain leadership positions. And leadership is not only reflected in politics, it's reflected in many areas, but to rise up other leadership levels, what kind of mindset should we propagate?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Tumwine. I'm sure your question is very broad. But one issue that I always say is that I see Joanna is back. I'm not sure whether I must continue.
She's back. Yeah, continue.
Yes, one issue that I always say to young people joining mainstream politics is that first, before you join mainstream politics, you must first get an ideological grounding of where you identify yourself in the balance of forces and in the ideological powers in politics. Because one fundamental issue that we experience is that we have a lot of young people joining politics without a clear ideological grounding in terms of where they belong in the ideological sphere. So in terms of the mindset before joining politics, I always encourage people, get an ideological footing first. Where do you belong? What type of politics do you identify with? What type of society as a politician do you want and do you aspire, to achieve? So that is the first fundamental question that every young person must answer before joining mainstream politics. If you are not ideologically grounded as a young person in politics, there is a problem that comes. It means that if you're not ideologically grounded, you can be blown with the wind anyway, and you don't have principles actually as a young person. So in our interactions with young people, my fundamental argument is that first found a footing. Where are you in politics? You cannot just say, I believe in anything. Where do you identify yourself as a young people in terms of as a young person, in terms of the balance of forces, in terms of the economy, in terms of society? Where do you identify yourself? That's number one. Number two is that young people must start realizing in terms of our mindset that we are all we have in Africa. Nobody's going to change Africa apart from the generation of young people that we have now. Because the generation that came before us, those people were coming from the bush. They are very tired. They don't identify with the contemporary problems that we face as young people. So we must fundamentally realize, and we must wake up, that we are the only people on this continent particularly those born after 1990, who are going to change the socio-economic trajectory of Africa. Nobody else. Nigeria now is going to the polls in February 2023, at the end of February, on 25th of February, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
The young people of Nigeria, the biggest economy in inverted commas in Africa, are the only ones who are going to change the situation of Nigeria. Imagine, let us take a contemporary comparative analysis of Nigeria in a country like Qatar, which just hosted the World Cup. Nigeria is as equally rich in oil deposits as Qatar is. So we must ask ourselves as young people on this continent, why is it that Qatar, in a very short period of time, managed to build incredible infrastructure, managed to host the World Cup, has one of the most stable economies in the world and one of the best top-tier infrastructure in the world. And Nigeria, which is equally the same amount of oil deposits, is finding itself in the situation where it is right now. It's a fundamental question that we have to ask ourselves, and it's a question of the deficit in leadership. That's all. Qatar has the right leadership, and Nigeria has a leadership that is there to plunder the country. Same with Angola. So we must, in terms of our mindset, going into these crucial elections, we must wake up as young people and say to ourselves, we are the only ones who can go to the polls as a bloc and vote for change. I'm very disappointed in a number of countries that a lot of young people are not interested in politics. A lot of them actually don't even bother to go and register to vote, because our mentality is that politics is for those in the political establishment, as we have nothing to do with politics. So our mindset must begin to say that we are the only ones who are charged to change Africa for the better. Thank you.
Very excellent. Taking a responsibility for sure. Very, very, very good fundamental questions so you raise and answers. You raise a very good question, like, where would you want to see your country in the 50 years from now, 20 years from now? Is it the same condition you want to see today, or you want to see it change? So that calls for your active participation and taking on the leadership mantra for sure. All right, we have Honorable Joana again. So, Honorable, do you continue? We're talking about your sharing your story. I think you're at the end sharing your story. But I want to ask you one more question. It's like, what key strategies can you employ, can you have to rise to the top leadership? What key strategies, both politically, socially, but also economically, how do you rise? What social skills do you need? What political training do you need? And it comes to personal strategy. You there, Joanna?
Yes, I was trying to unmute myself, but it's only you can unmute. So yeah, so thank you very much, Comrade Enoch. I was saying that I was sharing my experiences, right? But let me also give a context of Zimbabwe, the country that I am in, you see. So Zimbabwe, for a long time, we had one president, you know, after independence from 1980 to I think around 2017. So because of that, you know, dictator, Comrade Robert Mugabe, who was the president for almost 4 decades, you see, he has caused a lot of fear among Zimbabweans in general, whether young or old. As long as those people, they have different views with the people who are in the ruling party, you see, they are then targeted. So most of the things that happen in Zimbabwe is that when you have decided to oppose the government, or when you have decided to say this, to speak the truth, to stand, you know, on or for other people, it means that you're going to be a target for persecution or even for prosecution. So the situation in Zimbabwe, you know, is very sad to the extent that young people just fear, you know, to participate in politics, because for them, politics, you know, it's that game that, you know, you end up being in jail, or you know, you end up going to court, right? So in Zimbabwe, they do not even fear whether you're a member of parliament. They will just arrest you. You have cases of myself and my other colleagues who were even abducted during a peaceful demonstration. So imagine young people in Zimbabwe seeing those kind of stories, seeing those kind of situations. Would they want to then participate in politics. You know, we have members of parliament who are being targeted. They're being beaten, you know, they're being, arrested. So this is the situation that we have right now. The issues to do with fear. But what can we do as a solution? We as young people, or we as leaders and as political parties, right? So there is a deliberate move that we need to make sure that we do. Number one, let's conscientize the young people. You see, this thing, obviously, they'll come to an end. You see, nothing lasts forever. Even the dictator, you see, it's going to come to an end. So we need to make sure that we conscientize young people. We make sure that they grow that thick skin through the mentorship programs, through the cadreship development. We have to make sure that we bring young people and conscientize them, mobilize them to make sure that, you see, they also stand up for themselves. They also speak up, you know. So those are the things that we need to do, you know, as politicians. And then secondly, what I wanted to say is the issues of, voting, for example. When you talk about young people participating, you know, in leadership, it's not about just standing up to become, to be elected, but also it's participating in those democratic spaces and also issues to do with governance. For example, you know, just challenging the status quo. For example, just tweeting about things that are wrong in our countries. Young people are even afraid to just tweet, to just write on social media to say these things are wrong in Zimbabwe. How do we make sure that we correct this? Talk about voter registration, talk about, voting processes. Young people do not want to participate. Right now, like what Comrade Max has said, Nigeria is going for elections in February. Zimbabwe, we are going for elections in this August or July. You see, and if you see the figures that are being released by the electoral commissions in all these countries, very few young people would even just want to go out and register to vote, because for them, you know, they fear that even if you go out and vote for the opposition, if you go out and vote for this ruling party, you know, you become a target of torture, you become a target of abduction, you become a target of brutality, because this is what has been inculcated in us. So this is the situation that we have on the ground in Zimbabwe, but I'll speak from experience, you see. So what do we need to do as young people? We need to make sure that we grow the thick skin. We need to make sure that we become strong. We mobilize, you know, ourselves from the grassroots. And also, even within our regions, we need to make sure that the SADC, young people in SADC speak with the same voice. Young people in Africa, you know, young people in this continent, we also speak in one voice. We need to make sure that we face this dictator, you know, and make sure that we come together and deal with these people who feel very much that they are entitled. So as a way.
Hello? We kind of lost you. Yeah, go ahead, Joanne.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so I was just talking about that issue of young people coming together, the same way that, you are hosting this kind of spaces, right? To say that young people in the region, they have to speak with one voice. Young people in the continent, they have to speak, you know, with one voice to make sure that, you know, we challenge the status quo in our countries. We have to be united as young people to make sure that we actually challenge these current leaders who feel that they're entitled. Like what Max said, they're coming from the bush. Yes, you know, they feel entitled because they went to war. But, you know, it was a different, scenario altogether. We are now transformational leaders. We are now supposed to be, looking and, strategizing on other things. For example, you know, the policies in our countries, how do we deal with that? So for them, they're still thinking about the bushes, not thinking about the current, scenarios. This is why even corruption is increasing in all these countries. This is why you see all these problems, because for them, they are very greedy and they're selfish, so they don't even think about the future. But who is the future at this point in time? The future is unite, we speak with one voice. Injure one, injure all comrades. When one comrade is being attacked in Swaziland, like our comrade Maseko, we need to make sure we stand up and speak with one voice. When one comrade Max in Namibia is attacked, let's stand up and speak with one voice. Comrade Joana in Zimbabwe, the same thing. All of us young people in Africa, let's make sure that we unite, we speak with one voice and challenge these dictators. We can do it in this country. Let's develop a thick skin. Let's make sure that we challenge them. Let's look at the beast in its eyes and say enough is enough. This is my message to young people. We can't just sit down and fold our hands. Let's identify ourselves with with different political parties. Let's make sure that we join political parties, because also if we want to do it individually, we are not going to succeed. So we need to make sure that we join forces, we join political parties, we join leadership groups and face this dictator united. I thank you, comrade.
Thank you, Comrade Joana. That's very powerful message. There is an illusion in many young people that, we must be allowed to participate in leadership. That's an illusion, because politics, power is not given. Power is taken. You must take yourself out there. So let's stop fantasizing that the government somehow, somewhere, someone in their mind is going to think like, my dear people need to participate. It's politics, it's power, it's strategy. I usually tell people, even all those guys you are expecting to put conducive environment for you guys to participate in politics, them too have their kids, probably in the same age. So they're not going to give more opportunities to you, yet they have their own relatives, sons. So the solution is taking it over. So power is not given, power is taken. No one has the right to give you power. You have the right to give you power yourself. And that's what Joana is talking about. Very, very key, for sure. So I'll leave it to the audience. I'm sure they have more questions to ask about this, and we'll continue from there. So anyone with a contribution from the audience and a question, ask these young leaders, how do they make it to the top? Please go ahead, you hand up and ask, or just type in the question in the chat box. Oh yeah, use a chat button, like right, but I can see a limo. Go ahead. Alimo? Go ahead, ask questions. Alimo? Go ahead and ask the question if you want. Okay, so anyone with a question, please shoot and ask. We don't have to say many times. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't think you were mentioned my name.
We can't hear you, so probably.
You're not hearing me? Can you hear me? All right, now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Maybe it's better without an earphone. I used to be an earphone.
Okay, prepare yourself well as you work on it. We'll come back to you. Elizabeth, ask a question.
Thank you very much, Enoch, and thank you very much to the previous speakers. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm from Uganda. So one of the issues that we are facing this side in Uganda is, for starters, I work with a civil society organization, and in our programming, we see to it that we bring young leaders together for some sort of training. But then you realize that young people go into these leadership positions and do not have knowledge of what they're supposed to be doing in these positions. And at the end of it all, we came to a conclusion that they are not so much ignorant, but probably they are not looking up to the right people, or they do not have the right mentors into leadership. But then also in Uganda, you find it as an issue for people to become mentors, because there's that power struggle. They're like, if I mentor Enoch, sorry to use you as an example, if I mentor Enoch, probably he's going to come up and take up my position. But then you'll find that we are being left behind when it comes to decision-making processes and all that. The inclusion is limited. So my question is, how can young people thrive, putting aside the issue of they do not have someone to look up to drive them into the right direction? Because at the end of the day, we are the leaders of tomorrow. So how can we stand up to that? Thank you.
Very fundamental question, for sure. So if you're not speaking, you can mute, please. There's an echo going on. So Honorable Maximilliant, do you want to take it on, or Honorable Joan? You want to jump to it?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I go ahead?
Yes.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for the questions from the previous speaker from Uganda. On the question, firstly, I want to tackle the question of whether young people have the experience or not. I always say that that question in Africa is inconsequential, because even if we are to argue that young people don't have the experience, the old guards that are in power are equally more clueless. So I would rather give a young person the benefit of the doubt than give the more clueless old guard, the benefit of the doubt. So for me, that question is inconsequential. And it leads to my larger point, which I said earlier, in terms of where I say that if we are expiring to go into leadership positions as the new generation of leaders in Africa, we must first and foremost ensure that we get an education. We cannot afford the same cycle of uneducated leaders holding key positions of the state like we have seen since the dawn of the post-independent state in Africa. We cannot afford that. So the first revolutionary duty of a young person in Africa today, and the most important, is to ensure that you pursue an education if you can. We are very much aware that, in some countries and in some societies, it is really difficult even for young people to access higher education where there's no free higher education and so forth. But if you can, you must ensure that you get an education so that we solve the complex challenges that our world is confronted with and our continent is confronted with. So that is number one. Number two, I don't blame the situation where we find that, our young people don't have, the right capacity of mentors on the continent. It is really difficult to get the right capacity of mentors on the continent, because those that we are supposed to aspire and look up to are the ones messing up the continent, and those that critique the system are not in power. So now, as a young person, you are caught up in this conundrum of who exactly must I go for mentorship, because those that are having power are messing up, and those that are having the wisdom for power are not in power. So it's a very complex situation that we're in, and I don't blame young people for that. But if you are having access to that mentor, please make sure that you receive the correct type of mentorship. As I said earlier, not all type of mentorship is the correct type of mentorship. So you must always receive mentorship from those who stand on the side of truth and justice, even though they are not in power. Another fundamental fault that we young people make is that in our attempt to fast track our footing in positions of power, we often receive advice from very unscrupulous elements that are in leadership. For example, there was a motivational talk hosted by one of our ministers in 2019 in Windhoek. He was our former Minister of Justice. And then this motivational talk was attended by the youth league of the ruling party. And this guy was giving all sorts of unscrupulous, motivational talk to these young people. Just a few months later, that minister was arrested for a corruption scandal on a scale that we have not seen in this country, and he's now in prison awaiting trial. So in our efforts to, to be closer to power and so forth, we must make sure that the advice that we are receiving from our so-called mentors is the correct type. Always receive advice from mentors that are on the side of truth and justice, even though they are not close to power. So that is just my short contribution on that point. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very key. But there is you again ties to your personal strategy. Are you going to not to achieve your dreams because you didn't have a mentor? Come on, that it comes. If you have mentors, for sure, go ahead. If you don't have, just mentor yourself. And you can have mentorship in many ways. You can have mentorship in books, audios, YouTube. Please mute. Yeah, you can have, please, it's just a protocol. You can mute yourself. If you're not speaking, just mute yourself. The members of parliament knows they're keeping the house, this is our August house. Please keep it silent and very formidable to the cause. Yeah, so I was saying that you cannot blame your situation that I didn't have mentors, therefore I'm not taking on. You can have mentors in many ways. You can pass people who have done an incredible job. Books can mentor you. So there is no excuse. Otherwise, let's root out that excuse. You can be a great mentor to yourself. And in ways, there are people willing and very helpful. You just have to reach out for sure. Honorable Joana, do you have an idea on that? You want to say on that? Okay, let's go ahead, but should be quick the question, please. Bismarck.
Yeah, thank you very much. My question is, I'm looking at the financial demands in joining politics in Africa. What are some of the ways that we, the young people, can join without going through that demand cycle? Thank you very much. I'm Bismarck from Ghana.
Good question. Everywhere in the world, politics is money has come to be commercialized. But I will Honorable Joanne, do you have an idea on that? Do you want to respond to that? Joanna?
Thank you very much, Enoch. Yes, thank you. First of all, I just wanted to contribute just a little bit to the previous question, you see, about leadership, getting into positions and becoming clueless. I am sure Max can actually agree with me that when you're elected as a leader, sometimes it's, the first 2 years of the first 1 year, you see, you feel like you're nowhere. You feel like you're in the wrong space, because most of the time this space is occupied by those, old people and so forth. And it's very difficult to then locate your mentor or locate someone that you look up to. So I think it's actually also a deliberate ploy by those, older, people to say that, we do not get the necessary information or the necessary tools to equip ourselves when we get into the position. So for myself, I've always spoken to young people, who'd want to join politics or who'd want to come to parliament, to say, just be passionate about, about this thing. Make sure that, you have the drive to learn, look up, to mentors or people who have, traveled the same journey that you're traveling. You see, that's number one. Secondly, you see, join the leadership training. There are a lot of organizations. Elizabeth, you have talked about that. You also work with the civic society where you groom, other young people. So as a young leader, make sure that you join those spaces, you join, those groupings or organizations where leaders are being mentored or are being molded, because alone, obviously, you're not going to, to do it alone. But at the same time, like Max has said, I would support a young person. Let's gain the experience, you see, by actually getting into those leadership positions and roles. So we can't then say young people are clueless. Young people, who is supposed to be teaching the young people when we are not given the chance? When young people are out, how do we learn when we are out? Who do we look up to when the same people, like Max has said, are the ones that are actually messing up this continent? So let's get into those positions. We learn as we go. We will make sure that, we learn from the best teacher, that is experience, you see. So then the second issue to do with the finances, personally, I would say that the reason why, we need good strategists when we are planning for campaign, you should surround yourself with those people who are also able to make sure that they fundraise for your campaign. There are people out there who are ready to support young people into leadership positions. There are people out there who are serious about making sure that young leaders are being groomed and are being given a chance. You see, so I would say that make sure that you have a group of people that would maybe fundraise for you, for your campaign and so forth. And also as a young person, when you go out for fundraising, don't tell these people that
you need $1,000. Tell them that you need flyers, you need posters, you need t-shirts. You see, that way, you build confidence, amongst those people who are ready to then support you. So this is what I would say from experience. These people who have the money, who have the financial capacity, do not want us young people to then go and ask, for money. Ask for exactly what you want. So it's also very important to build that network of, people who can be able to support you financially. So this is how we have grown to be where we are today, because obviously coming from university, because when I got into the mainstream politics, I was just coming from university. So how come? How can I then have some financial, capacity to drive my own campaign? So it's either you get money from your political party, but mostly when you're in the opposition like myself, you not get the necessary financial assistance because you have little, support in the opposition financial. So I would say that make sure that you have your clear budget, be organized as a leader, be very organized as a leader. So make sure that you prepare your budget. Once your budget is ready, go to the necessary, people, your network, so that you can go and fundraise. But don't ask for money. Ask for the exact things that you'd want, to be helped with. So that would be my advice to young people. Go and ask for the necessary support. Don't be vague. Just get straight to the point. Ask for the necessary tools that would help you in your leadership positions. I thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. That's a very, very, very fundamental question. You know what? I'm going back to controlling muting people because noise. Yeah. So that's very key. Fundraising again taps to the network. So,
Honorable Enoch, did you hear my point? I realized that my network had dropped.
no, we had you clear.
Okay. Let me just come again. Again.
We had you very well. We had you.
Did you hear about the financial issues?
Yes, I did. I'm sure all people. You are very loud and clear. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you very much. We have a few minutes to go, so a quick question, and I'll ask our honorables to also give like a quick response. Rutindo, go ahead. Second, Javi. Third, Fozia. Go ahead, please. Shoot.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity. So, my question is, what are the politics as some of my has highlighted that they are
We can't hear you, Rutindo. Type. You can't speak. Type in the chat.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, good.
Hello.
Speak up. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, what other roles can young people play in politics other than, I understand that we can't all be members of parliament, we can't all be councillors. So what other effective roles can you play other than participating in politics, voting, registering to vote, democratic issues? What other roles can us young people ensure that we play an effective role?
Thank you.
Hello, Enoch. Good evening.
Please press mute.
Hello, everyone.
First wait, please. Thank you.
Thank you for those motivations and the good work.
Hello, please first wait. We'll come to you, okay? Let's first respond to the question. They're asking what other roles can young people play in politics other than being, definitely not everyone can become a member of parliament. Honorable Maximilian.
Yes, no, thank you very much. Is a question before we come in, or?
Yes, it's a question for you. Like, what other roles can young people play without being members of parliament, but play in politics, in a larger political spectrum?
Yes, I also just wanted to contribute on the previous issue of funding and how young people without funds, can access, the political establishment and be elected into office. And I want to advise also my sister Joana and other people that are on the platform that we first have to start with, reforming the system. For example, in Namibia, I think the system is very, pro much anybody that can get into the system, because we don't contest from the constituency. We contest from, you must first be elected on the party list, and then it's calculated based on proportional representation, and each party gets allocated seats in the National Assembly. So you must first advocate for reform in the system to decommercialize elections, because if we have an issue where someone is elected into positions of power based on the amount of resources they have, then it's no longer a free and fair elections. Then it's an election of money. You get elected on the basis that you have enough resources to get you into power. And that becomes an elitist sort of politics that is, shielding a lot of young people away from politics. So we must reform for a system that, includes
Hello, Max Mill, we lost you. Okay, good.
At what point did you hear me?
Yes, we did. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you hear me since I was starting to speak, or in the middle?
No, yes, we're hearing you.
Yeah. So we must advocate for a system that says that you must not be elected in an office based on the amount of financial resources we have, but because that you are a capable candidate who deserves that particular office. And such an intervention must come from the state directly, because in a country like Namibia, I don't know other countries, but here each party receives funds from the Electoral Commission in terms for them to conduct, their day-to-day businesses, administration of the party and so forth, and all these side of things. And then also when you're heading to campaigns, the Electoral Commission also gives some funds for, for parties to campaign and to sort of, level the ground, so that one party does not have, bigger financial muscles over the other and so forth. So I think across the board on the African continent, we have to start advocating for such interventions. The second point was, I just lost touch of the second question.
So other roles young people can play other than being like members of parliament in politics. So.
Oh yes, no, that is a very fundamental question. I always encourage young people to join politics and to join a political party. In fact, I continue to encourage young people to join a political party, because ultimately the instruments of power of the state lies in politics. But we must not adopt a mentality which says that you can only affect change if you join a political party and if you join a politician. Just take, for example, how many civil society activists in your country have fundamentally altered the operations of society in your country? Like here, for example, we have people that are totally outside of politics, but they still influence politics more than those ones that are in parliament. So as a young person, you must always be cognizant that politics, yes, it decides the fundamental, decisions of society, but you must not be confined only to politics. Join a civil society organization, join an NGO, because you can even have a bigger voice outside parliament than inside parliament. Another day, I was conducting a survey amongst our people who said, where I was asking, how many members of parliament do you actually know? And most of them could not even actually mention 10% of people that are in parliament. It means that it does not necessarily mean that you have power if you're a politician and if you're in parliament. You can actually have more power outside politics and outside parliament than those ones inside parliament if you join civil society and if you fundamentally fight for the rights of people in society. So in as much as it's important to join politics, also be cognizant of the fact that you don't need to join a political party to effect change in society. If you're a leader that cares about our people, you can effect change from wherever you are, whether it's a civil society, whether it's an NGO, or from wherever.
For sure. Thank you very much. Just a reminder, let's hit at the point, and we'll ask our panelists also to make their response quick. We have like 8 minutes to go. So we have Fozia. Fozia, you go ahead and ask a question. Fozia, okay, not around. Alimo wanted to ask a question earlier. Can you go ahead and ask the question? Be quick. Yeah, I've muted you. You can ask.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me right now? Can you hear me? Okay. Let's continue. So the first question first of all, I would like to thank the guests and all the audience. So the first question I'm asking is how do you think we're gonna achieve the goal to become a leader, since the power took by some political groups for a long period of time, as you know, especially in Africa as a culture. So and power doesn't transfer without gun and war. Plus, different conspiracies took place in the political power, so in the political leadership. So how could you achieve a young leadership in Africa? This is the first question. The second question is...
No, you just have one question because there are so many people and we don't...
Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Joanne, do you want to come in and attempt that?
Enoch, I did not get his question. If you could rephrase it, because he was not audible.
Okay. So he's asking, like, how can we, like, the young people hold the leadership, given that there are so many political forces that come and paint the same results? I think he's asking, like, so many people come with a lot of want to change, but they end up with the same result. So how can we set a paradigm? How can we set a standard? Is that not what you're asking, Limo?
Okay, sorry. My question is that, as you know, in Africa, the leadership is took by some groups for a long period of time. So how can we get the chance or the opportunity to become the next leadership, on leadership? How can we become the leader, or how can you get the opportunity to become the leader in Africa? As you know, because I'm asking this question is that, as you know, in Africa, especially in Africa, the power has been taken for a long period of time by some only with some groups or with some political powers. So how could we get the chance?
As young people, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, exactly. Honorable Joanne, you understood the question now?
Okay.
You understand?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, I understood his question. So he's asking about how do we change the status quo? Because maybe even if we try to change it, maybe even if we have elections, there's still going to be the same result. It's not like it seems things are not changing in our countries.
Exactly.
Yes. So first of all, I would want to say that we need to participate as young people. We need all of us as young people, not individuals. Just for example, myself alone, right? I cannot be able, to change the status quo of young people of Zimbabweans, or even my political party here in Zimbabwe. All of us in the political party, right? As many as we are in our political party. But if we go for the elections, we are not going to change the status quo in Zimbabwe until and unless the rest of the people understand, they are conscientized, they are educated, they are mobilized, and understand that the status quo can be changeable. That's when we can change the status quo. So as long as we have a certain, a bigger chunk of people who still, see that, who still think or have that mentality that things are not going to change, things will definitely not change. So the best advice that I'll give to young people is that we need to participate. Even if you feel like you're the only one who is participating, let's participate. And when you are participating, when you are in the leadership position as a young person, make sure that you go out there, educate other young people, conscientize other young people so that they also become active, so that they also participate. So the more we participate, the bigger we become as, as a grouping of people. That's when we can change status quo. So we need to make sure that we are very, very cautious about the things that are happening in our country. As young people, we can't just be passive. We can't fold our hands and just look to say, I don't know, things are just happening in political. So even if you do not join a political party, you still have a role to play. You still have a role to educate, to understand what is happening in your countries. So my brother, I encourage you that, the time will come when things are going to change and you want to be part of that history. Encourage other people, educate other people so that you also, there's a saying that says that, we don't all get informed or educated the same day. Others, it takes time for them to understand that we have a problem or we have a difficult situation. So I would say that let's make sure that we conscientize each other so that other people can see that there are wrong things that are happening in our countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that's the best answer you can give, like mindset to change that you can also change. Other than that, we are going to repeat the same cycle. You're going to blame Robert Mugabe, Mnangagwa, and also a young person comes, probably even become worse than them. But if you oriented the mind to change, like you have to beat the standard and you have to beat mediocrity, that's where change comes. It doesn't come because there is a change of God. It comes because there is a change of mindset and fundamentals. So that's what we need to make also clear, for sure. So we have a few minutes. So I would like, I'm sorry for those who have their hands up. We have to go. I would like our guests to give final remarks. And we at African Rebirth have a tradition. We say magic words. What are your 3 magic words? Like in short, in 2 minutes, 2 minutes. What are your magic words? What's your final package to the young leaders? I'll start with Honorable Maximalliant. You wanna go ahead?
Mr. Enoch, I will repeat the same words 3 times, which is we must persevere, persevere, and persevere. And we stand in solidarity with our sisters and brothers in Zimbabwe who are going towards a critical elections later this year. And we know that things are not easy there. And the only thing that beats election rigging is numbers. You cannot rig an election with numbers, no matter how hard you try. the numbers will defeat your rigging. So let us carry that spirit throughout Africa as we head towards critical elections in 2023 and 2024. The young people of Benin must stand up on the 24th of June this year. The young people of Djibouti must stand up this year. The young people of Egypt, of Gabon, of Mozambique must stand up this year as they head towards critical elections this year. The African continent and its future relies on young people and those particularly born after 1990. If we all go out and register, no amount of electioneering and no amount of cooking or rigging can stop the will of the African young masses. So let us go forward, all of us, and persevere for the betterment of our continent. Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent. Honorable Joanna, your last bullets, magic. Let me mute you. Yeah.
Thank you, my brother Enoch. My last words to young people is that young people must never give in to fear. We need and we must confront and overcome those things that we fear the most. If you fear the dictator, confront it. If you fear to participate, confront your fears. So for me, this is what has taken me thus far, confronting my fears. So the moment that you feel afraid as a young person, the moment that you feel you cannot do certain things because you're afraid, confront those fears and never give in to fear to make sure that it takes the center stage, right? So that those will be my parting words to say that, you know, we need to make sure that we confront the dictator and also stand together. Let's stand in solidarity with each other. Right now on this platform, you know, you can't leave this platform as a young person without, you know, one or two people that you are going to network with, one or two people that you're going, you know, to make sure that you talk to outside this Zoom platform. It can't be a Zoom in vain. Let's make sure that we create these networks. The next thing that the next time that I go to Namibia, I have to make sure that now I know Comrade Max. I know Comrade Max. He's supposed to understand my, you know, my predicaments here in Zimbabwe. The next time he comes to Zimbabwe, he's supposed to look for a Joana here. You see, so this is how we grow our networks. But the fundamental thing is, I want to encourage people, young people, confront your fears. Never let your fears take the center stage in this struggle. I thank you.
Wow. Now, you know, when you host fellow comrades who are revolutionaries, you feel like pumped and ready to confront the biggest challenges of the day. Persist, don't be conformed to the fears, you know, beat up your fears. And I want to summarize a few things here. I want to make it to the top. What I had from what our guest, distinguished guest presented, I saw the level of orientation. You must know your goal. You must know yourself. What do you want to achieve? And how do you tie your personal ambition to a bigger cause for the greater good? Number 3 is organization. You must be very organized, strategize, mindset-wise, connection-wise, network-wise. If I want to be a member of parliament, how do I prepare to become a member of parliament? These things are not manna from heaven. They're intentional, they're sacrifice. There is a lot of work. It's not a magic bullet. You have to be organized. Number 3 that I had is action. You know, you can dream, you can be a good, well-organized person, but you need to take an action. And an action can be from your community. You can be from taking a leadership role at a university, can be taking a leadership role at another council, can be taking a leadership role in a political rally, you know, action, you know. Number 5 is commitment. Are you able to pay the price? So those 5 things, please. Number 1, orientation. You must be ideologically very clear for what you want. Organization, you must be able to plan and perform to the standards you want. Number 3 is action. Take action, please. Number 5 is commitment. When you combine all those stuff, it is evident you will succeed. And let's not get away from this fantasy that someone somewhere sitting in State House or somewhere is going to give us the freedom to achieve what we want. We must take it. People need to be told the truth about power. Power is not given. You know, you're not going to be given power. You must take power. You must take your place in the world. You must, go ahead and do it. And those without experience, I told you, there is no other excuse. A great question. It took Robert Mugabe and the young people to beat the colonists, and others, the Kwame Nkrumahs. But right now, what can our generation be known for? It's very important to take that into consideration. So let's stand up, let's hype the game, and let's go act, and let's increase our network. Thank you very much for the day. And thank you very much, Honorable Maximalliant. Comrade, please connect with him. And thank you, Honorable Joanne. Connect with them. They must share a lot, even outside the Zoom meeting. So we continue the struggle to liberate Africa. Liberating Zimbabwe is one small item in the bigger geopolitical scheme for African continent. So if each country is liberated, we have a go ahead. We have a stamina where to stand. We have a center of gravity we can stand. So young ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and act. And again, act. I thank you very much. Have a very awesome day.